What's up, everybody? April the 11th, 2018. Carolina Jackpot is in the house, and it's time to talk some college football, people. It's April, spring practice, and the spring game at Carolina has come to an end, and we're going to start rolling into the off season. Full bore, getting ready for 2018, which will be kicking off on September the 1st. There's a lot of optimism in Columbia this year, as well there should be. We've got a new offensive coordinator, a new offensive scheme, mindset, and I will not make any bones about it. South Carolina Gamecocks are my favorite team. I'll be doing a lot of these preseason predictions, just like I did last year for a lot of different teams. I wanted to do Carolina's first, and they're my favorite team. Been watching them, loving them since I was old enough to know what football and sports was. I'm 43 years old now, so obviously we've had some good times, we've had some bad times, but we're going to keep this today as objective as possible without interjecting the fandom into it, because I think that's important when you're looking at a schedule. I mean, you can sit here all day long and say, oh yeah, we're going to beat the crap out of X, Y, and Z, when you really don't have the talent to really compete with X, Y, and Z. This is just what you wish for and what you hope will happen. So you try to make it so through your words, and that's just not that's not the case. It's you have to be realistic. So we're going to go through this game by game. We'll do it in a couple of different parts because I get to talking about each one, and it runs a little bit long. So let's jump into this thing full bore. Like I said, Carolina has got a new offensive coordinator. Brian McClendon's taken over. Will Muschamp dismissed Kurt Roper last year after the Clemson game before the bowl game against Michigan. And he let Brian call the plays against Michigan. Did a good job, especially in the second half. Carolina just kept... We were behind in that game, I think 19-3 at one point, and kept plugging away. Finally, the dam broke, and we scored a ton of points unanswered there on one of the better defenses in the nation. And Coach Muschamp handed the reins to Brian after that, and congratulations to him. I think he's a tremendous coach, and he's going to do great things for us. Jake Bentley, our quarterback, likes the new up-tempo offense. I don't remember how quick they were. It was just every, I want to say 20 seconds or so, they were running a play in the spring game. I haven't seen an offense that up-tempo. It kind of reminds me of Syracuse. Hopefully we'll enjoy more success on the football field than what Syracuse does, because I believe we can also play defense. But Jake says he likes that type of offensive play calling. That's what he's used to. Kind of some of the stuff he did in high school when he was in the Burns system when he was much younger. He just feels more comfortable making these decisions on the fly than having to sit back in the pocket. He's not the most mobile guy in the world, so sometimes that can breed disaster, especially when your offensive line is not that great. Hopefully we've gotten that somewhat shored up this year. I know Muschamp and they were working hard on recruiting along both lines of scrimmage. That's been kind of an Achilles heel ever since the end of the Steve Spurrier era, to be honest with you, especially the offensive line and the pass rush have been kind of weak. But let's jump into the schedule. September the 1st, we will be taking on the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. And they were 3-9 last year. They compete in the Sun Belt Conference. Kind of an interesting team. They've only been FBS for a few years, and kind of one of those teams of the future, really. Kind of like South Florida or Central Florida was a number of years ago. I think they got the facilities and definitely the location to be a player one day. 3-9 last year. We know for definitely can put up a lot of points. They also give up a lot of points. Their head coach is kind of not from a traditional coaching background. He was a CEO of some type of computer company or something in his former life. So that's interesting. competitive last year in some games, and they weren't. They actually played SEC opponent Arkansas, one of our opponents, to a 1-point game. They lost by 1 point. However, they got blown out by Arkansas State, who is also a member of their conference. So that's it's going to be a typical opening game. You take care of a team like this. South Carolina has not played particularly well in their opening games over the years. Last year was kind of an exception. We took care of an opponent that we actually were underdogs against in NC State. A lot of people want to give Carolina a hard time because NC State kind of dominated the stat line. But the bottom line is, at the end of the game, the scoreboard said 35-28, and South Carolina won. We dominated them on special teams, and we came up with stops when we needed to. This game, I don't think will be close, maybe for a quarter or so. Might get some of those jitters out of the way. But we could come out firing on all cylinders and just blow them out. I don't really know what to expect, but I do think that Carolina will pick up the win in this game, so we're going to give them a W there. Okay. Game number 2, we return to Willie B the next week to take on the Georgia Bulldogs, a longtime rival and participant in last year's national championship game. Of course, many folks thought that they should have won the national championship, me included. I was kind of surprised that they couldn't hold on to that at the end. And in my opinion, Georgia was the best team in the SEC last year, especially during regular season. But when playoff time came, fourth-seeded Alabama was the cream. They rose to the top. They easily took care of our nemesis, the Taters, in the first round, the Sugar Bowl matchup, and then fell behind Georgia early, kept plugging away in the second half, and finally broke through and won the game. Georgia lost a lot in the offseason. They lost a lot. Nick Chubb, Sonny Michel, both graduated. Roquan Smith, who was Defensive Player of the Year, gone, early enrollee, or not early enrollee, left early for the NFL draft. What I'm talking about there. He's gone. He was a tremendous player and good leader on that defense. This will be, in my opinion, South Carolina's best chance to get Georgia. Kirby Smart brought the nation's #1 recruiting class in as well. And losing Chubb and Michelle is a blow, but not so much of a blow. It's kind of softened when you look at you have athletes like Elijah Holyfield, Brian Harrion, DeAndre Swift, who are ready to take over. Also, Zamir White, young man out of Laurinburg, North Carolina, I believe it is, Scotland County. If you have not watched any high school film on Zamir White, please go over to YouTube and do that. You owe it to yourself as a football fan. This kid is an absolute beast. He got hurt towards the end of his high school season last year, so he's not really been. I don't think he's really been a huge part of their spring. But this kid is going to break some records, and he'll definitely be the best of all those before it's all said and done. Justin Fields, also the nation's #1 quarterback in some circles. Some say it was Trevor Lawrence who signed with the Tigers. But anyway you want to look at it, they're all great athletes, and I don't really know how Fields is going to fit in with Georgia this year, seeing as Jake Fromm, who came out of nowhere last year to lead them to a national championship game. So took him over for Jake Beasley in the first game. So I don't think he's going to be relegated to the bench anytime soon. It'll be interesting. This will be, like I said, in my opinion, the best chance to get Georgia for years to come, because they brought in the nation's #1 recruiting class, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I think Kirby's going to keep on recruiting at a high level, which is what you have to do to consistently be a playoff contender, all right, and a conference championship contender. I don't see Carolina winning this game. I still see Georgia coming out on top here. I just think they have more depth. They have better athletes. I'm going to give us a loss in this one, but we do play Georgia tough. It is a home game. We will be amped up for it. Of course, we were amped up for Clemson last year, and you saw what happened in that one. it's going to be interesting. I'm going to give us a loss. We'll see how it pans out. Hopefully, I'm wrong, but that's just the way I see it. Game number 3 at home against the Marshall Thundering Herd. Now, this is an interesting game. Marshall is a member of Conference USA. They went 8-5 last year, won their bowl game against Colorado State. That was the Idaho Potato Bowl, I believe, or possibly the New Mexico Bowl. I can't remember. Their best player was their quarterback, Chase Litton. He's gone. Player from the NFL draft. Really good arm, NFL size player. So he's not there anymore. Really don't know a whole lot about the Thundering Herd, to be honest with you. I know a lot more about some of these teams than I do about others. Just really haven't been able to keep up with them a whole lot because we normally don't play them. They're not one of our rivals. But this is the kind of game that South Carolina has traditionally struggled in. Last year, Louisiana Tech, another team from the same conference as Marshall, had to rely on a last-second field goal from Parker White just to pull out a win there. Played horrible offensively in that game. So this year needs to be time South Carolina moves past that. They're more talented than Marshall, obviously. They should win this game by 3 to 4 scores. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. I mean, I could see this thing going to the fourth quarter. I really could, because that's just the type of game we play, and Carolina's been known to kind of play down to their opponents. So, like I said, this is something that we need to work past this year. But that notwithstanding, I'm going to go on ahead and give us the win against Marshall. Game number 4 will be the first road matchup of the year at Vanderbilt. We're 5-7 last year. Vanderbilt started out the season really strong. Win over Middle Tennessee State last year to start the season, a game in which I picked the Blue Raiders to cover. Vanderbilt surprised me, won at home like 28-6. Their best win of the season was probably in their third game against Kansas State. They pulled off a 14-7 upset at home over Bill Snyder's Wildcats. We played well there, especially defensively. And next week they had their first SEC tussle with Alabama. Crimson Tide came into Vanderbilt Stadium, and it was their biggest matchup in years. And they were amped up and ready for that one. They were promptly relegated to the children's table. 59-0 loss. Just a bully beat down by the Tide in that one. And they had went on to only win one SEC game last season, which was against their rival, the Volunteers, who were winless in SEC play. They returned Kyle Shermer, their quarterback. I think he fits Vanderbilt's system nicely. He's a good kid, makes some solid decisions. He's got some decent receivers and skill position players around him. They will be missing Ralph Webb, who was the all-time leading rusher at Vanderbilt. This is a road game, and South Carolina, however, though, that we typically will play some close games against Vanderbilt, but we normally take care of business against them. Vanderbilt's not a team that Carolina loses to very often. I think the whole time we've been in the SEC, we may have lost 4 to them in 25 years. So it's a fairly one-sided series in favor of the Gamecocks, and I look for that to continue this year. I don't see us going to Vanderbilt and taking a loss. But then again, last year was a 34-27 game, I think it was, against the Commodores at home. Really, had a turnover late, I believe. It led to a score by them, if I'm not mistaken, and made that game was a lot closer than it should have been at the end. We should have taken care of. I didn't even move it over to Vanderbilt. Sorry. Should have really taken care of Vanderbilt a lot more so than what we did. But I'm going to go on ahead in week number 4 at Vanderbilt Stadium. Not saying it's going to be easy, because it's always a tough row to hoe. But I'm going to give us another win against Derek Mason and company. All right, that takes us through the first third of the schedule there. I was trying to get through half of it, but only got through 1/3 with a 3-1 record. So the next week we'll travel to Kentucky, and we'll talk about that one and some more games in the next video, guys.